everyone. Welcome to this month's Getting to Know You interview. I'm Nina Cole. I'm your service user rep based in Accrington, East Lancs. Today I have with me my colleague Jackie Scott. Do you want to introduce yourself?
I am Jackie. I work as alcohol recovery worker volunteer out from Burnley Inspire.
Lovely, thank you, Jackie. And we have Karen Cassidy, who is our head of service for Lancashire. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi everybody, I'm Karen Cassidy. I'm the head of service across all the CGL services, the Change, Grow, Live services in Lancashire. Pleased to be here.
Thank you, Karen. Thanks. So we've got a series of questions for you today to our service users to get to know you as a person and you as your job.
Yeah.
Okay, so to start with, I'm going to ask you some questions first about your role and your job. So what does a head of services do?
Okay. So as head of service, it's about, I suppose, understanding and driving forward that sort of strategic responsibility across the services. So whilst guiding service managers who take on board the responsibility to make sure the operations are run well, it's making sure that we're all kind of working towards the same vision and the same goals so that we get the best outcomes for people who use our services. There's also a responsibility in terms of understanding what commissioners want. We're contracted to provide services and we have to obviously manage that within set budgets. So I keep my eye on the budgets as well.
Lovely, thank you, Karen. So what motivated you to work within drug and alcohol misuse services?
Well, this is a long story. I've been working in the drug and alcohol sector since I think around about just over 20 years now. I'd spent quite a few years, about 5 or 6 years, working in a very busy casualty department, accident and emergency department in Rochdale, after coming back to England from living abroad for a few years with my husband. And I wanted a change in career. When I left school, I trained to be a hairdresser, which Jackie will be interested in hearing about, talking about lockdown hair. I had my children, lived abroad with my husband who served in the Royal Navy for a while. And all the time that my little ones were growing from babies into toddlers, I was thinking, I really want a change. I'd had a grammar school education and I felt I'd wasted it a little bit, to be honest. So when I came back to England, I took up a job working just part-time initially in this A&E department, really interested in the people that were coming forward for help and support. And that kind of developed into a full-time role. And then as the National Drug Strategy kicked off in, I think it was 1998, and DATs were first established, you know, the partnership boards were first pulled together across the whole of the public sector to drive forward the National Drug Strategy. A job came up in Rochdale and there was just me and the DAT coordinator at the time. So I applied for that and I kind of, that was as an administrator. And I worked my way along into sort of commissioning, monitoring contracts, working with various providers in terms of developing new initiatives and new projects, etc. And then in 2006, I moved across to Blackburn with Darwen. So I had a commissioning role in Blackburn with Darwen and soon became the DAT coordinator there. So I've been from the side of kind of commissioning and contracting services. And I suppose, you know, ensuring that all our key partners were understanding what the service provision looked like and what it was bringing into the area and what was being achieved. I actually tendered the services in Blackburn with Darwen, and I think it was about something like 2014-15. And CGL were then CRI, and they tendered for the service. And I was so impressed by the tender and so impressed by the provision as it developed over the next few years, that when I saw the head of service job advertised, I thought, I really love the values of CGL. I'm going to apply for it. So that kind of brought me into CGL. Always had service users at the heart as well. We had a very, very much a service user focus in Blackburn with Darwen as CGL. So it just felt like a natural progression, really. And that's kind of the history of what's brought me to where I am.
Brilliant, thank you, Karen. Just for our service users, can you just explain what a DAT is?
Oh yeah, so I mean they don't have DATs anymore, but no. The DATs was the Drug and Alcohol Action Team. And it was basically a board of senior people from various different organisations. So it might be the police, probation services, health, local authorities, and sometimes the voluntary sector as well. And the board came together as an organisation, as a body, if you like, for that borough particularly, whichever area that local authority was covering, to make sure that as partners they were working together to address the needs of the community, whether it was for people who required a service of support, or whether it was for people who wanted to understand how to address the concerns in their communities, to improve things for families. That whole sort of strategic view really of how we make things. I think the initial strategy was something like tackling drugs to build a better Britain. The focus is still there to a certain extent, but we've just moved on in terms of how we do that.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Karen. I'm going to hand you over to Jackie for some questions.
Thank you, Karen. I'm going to move into a little bit of a more light-hearted zone now. I want to talk about Karen Cassidy the person, Karen Cassidy the lass. What are your likes and dislikes, Karen?
Ooh, likes. Got a bit of a sweet tooth, I have to admit. So I have said to myself after Christmas, that's it. I'm going to have to set myself a bit of a target to lose a bit of weight, because I love cakes and I love chocolates, and working from home quite a lot over the last 9 months has been a bit difficult in terms of nipping into the kitchen and grabbing a biscuit. So likes, yeah, and I love animals, I love children, I just love having fun. I like music, I like walking, I like being out there.
Be more specific on your musical taste.
Oh, right, well, you've challenged me there, you see. I suppose I grew up in an era where I was a bit of a rock chick, so I love all the stuff.
Oh, we're getting that, aren't we, Nina?
I love groups like AC/DC who've never really gone away, have they? I spent quite a bit of time in my youth going to concerts and things. I've got a varied taste really, but and I love having a bit of a sing-song. So we put Alexa on and, you know, go through the bands of the 80s or the bands of the 90s or even the 70s. And I think I've passed that sort of interest in music on to particularly my son. We quite often, if we go out for a drive in the car, we blast out a bit of Highway to Hell and sing together.
Fantastic. Moving on. Do you have any hobbies? Do you have time for any?
I like walking. So as I say, I like being out there in green open spaces. We have a caravan, my husband and I. We used to have a caravan years ago when my children were younger, and I love just getting out there and being able to relax, taking the scenery, visit different places, and just experience different things. And sometimes just to give your mind a bit of a break from the everyday tasks that we have to manage, really.
Thank you. Tell us a bit about your family. We've got your son in there.
Yeah, so I've got, so I've been married for, probably almost 30 years now. I've got, oh, it's been a rocky road at times, like most people's, I think. I've got 3 children. So I've got a stepson who's almost 40. And then I've got a son who's 29 and a daughter who's 27. 3 grandchildren. My daughter's little girl is the youngest at 2, and then my stepson's got 2 girls who are 10 and 4. So very much surrounded by little girls. Yeah, that's us.
Lovely, thank you. Talked a bit about holidays. I'm wondering if there's going to be something different comes out here. What's your best holiday destination?
Ooh, this is a tough one, I think, because I've been to so many lovely places. I've been fortunate, I suppose. I really like lots of places in the UK that we've had to probably, I suppose, go to more of them just recently. But one of my favourite places that I've visited is New Zealand. My friend her son lives in New Zealand, so a few years ago we went out to visit him, and he lives in Auckland, so we visited both the South and North Island, and they're very different. It was a long way, but I absolutely loved it. Again, breathtaking scenery, such clean air, and just a different culture, a different way of life, very peaceful. good for your well-being.
Thank you. Sounds lovely. Never been to New Zealand. Now, do you have any special talents?
Oh gosh, I don't know about that, to be honest. I like to think I can sing a bit, maybe. We do practice a little bit of karaoke sometimes when we get a chance. Both me and my husband like to sing.
Can you bake though?
I can bake and I can cook, but I'm kind of more of them can cook but won't cook sort of person. Yeah, my husband loves cooking, so I'll leave it.
That's handy then, isn't it?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I'll hand over to you, Nina.
Thanks, Jackie. I'm going to ask you a bit more about, because you already mentioned service user experience and involvement. So I'm going to ask you some more about that. So what are the biggest challenges within your role?
I suppose at the moment it's being able to listen to everybody, because it's such a big patch is Lancashire. So one of the challenges is just making sure that I have time, I suppose, to hear the voices of everybody. And sometimes the time to communicate back to everybody as well. I'm conscious that whilst I've been working at home quite a lot in the last 9 months or so, I think I've only physically been into buildings a couple of times, and it's lovely to just have a chat in the kitchen when you're making a brew with somebody, or just to feel that you're actually there and able to have a face-to-face discussion. So that's been a bit of a challenge just recently. And I think just generally because of the size of the patch, the communication is a bit of a challenge at times. But I've absolutely loved keeping up with things on social media and seeing what everybody is doing. That's so wonderful to stay connected. It actually kind of makes you realise that you don't always have to physically be together to feel like you're together.
Absolutely, I agree with that, Karen. Thank you. What do you consider to be your biggest successes then within your role?
So I suppose successes, I wouldn't claim that any of the successes are mine on my own, because I just think we've got such a wonderful team across Lancashire that I don't think any of the things could be achieved if you didn't have that team that worked together. And by the team, I mean absolutely everybody. I don't think that I can, lay claim to any of that as an individual success. I just think I'm really fortunate that we've got a wonderful team that actually makes things happen.
Brilliant, thank you. That's lovely to hear that. Yeah. So what does service user involvement actually mean to you?
So to me, it means that we're given the opportunity to hear the voices of the people who we are paid in our, paid roles to support, and that we actually are able to kind of see things from that person's point of view. Lived experience just means so much in terms of how do you know you're doing a good job if you're not in touch with the people who are receiving the service? How can we say that we're doing things and developing things in the right way, and the most important things, if we don't have service user involvement? And what I've also loved over the years seeing is how people who've been involved as service user representatives, I've seen them grow, and I've seen them, many of them go into the workforce. There are people across Lancashire now in the workforce that I remember my first service user group meeting in Blackburn, sitting down with them and having a chat with them and getting to know them. And, they're managers now, and it's absolutely fantastic. So I just think, they are the foundation of the rock, if that makes sense.
It does, thank you. Yeah, that's good to know that there's that progression there from volunteering through to paid work. What would your ideal vision be for service users, and how far do you think we are from that vision at the minute? Yeah,
so I think the vision for me is about absolute inclusivity. So that, we're not doing anything without listening to the voice of people who use our services, and their inclusion in terms of delivering it as well. I think in Lancashire we're really, really fortunate. I think across the northwest we're probably I look back over that 20 years of working in the sector, the Northwest has always been in front of other areas of the UK. But I think in Lancashire particularly, there's a right sense of community. And even if people move around the areas in Lancashire, they all know each other, or majority of them seem to know each other. And it kind of builds, it's a bit of a force to be reckoned with, I would say. So for me, that vision is really about building on that and maintaining it as well, because where would we be without it? You know, it's just so important.
Brilliant. Thank you for that, Karen. I'm going to hand you back over to Jackie for another set of questions.
Right. This is a series of questions about COVID-19.
Oh.
Not about your knowledge of it or anything like that. It's been a difficult time for all of us.
Yeah.
For one reason or another during lockdown period. How have you and your team responded or adapted to the changes?
Yeah, I agree, Jackie. It's been a real roller coaster of emotions. I've just been on a regional leadership team this morning with the Northwest colleagues. And sometimes I have to turn my camera off because I feel a bit of a tear coming in my eye. It really is emotional listening to people's experiences. And some days are good and some days are hard and some days, you know, they're just different challenges. So in terms of how the team in Lancashire have responded, service managers, they're so experienced, they've all been around so long and they really work well together. The lead clinicians, the lead nurses, etc. They just gel together really, really well and share experiences with each other. If one has a potentially a bad day, they bounce off each other and support each other well. And it feels like a family, to be honest. And I think if they hadn't have had those supportive relationships, COVID would have been a really, really testing time. I think they've kind of responded swiftly when they've needed to, but they've also taken a step back at times and sort of said, well, hang on a minute, that might be what the guidance is, but how do we need to interpret that locally? What does it mean to our service users and our individual services? And they flexed as best as they could. And the teams have been brilliant, you know, all organising themselves into clusters. I would say that, you know, it'd be foolish of me to say there haven't been times when there's been some anxiety among the workforce and the service managers and myself. Are we doing this right? Are we going to get this right? Are we going to create any more problems for ourselves? You know, it's like any task, any kind of challenge in life, isn't it? That we might not always get it right, but we'll learn from what we don't get right and we'll acknowledge that. And I think, as I say, I think the team in Lancashire have just done a wonderful job. And I hope that is, I kind of gain a sense that actually from service user feedback, it has been the right thing. But I'm sure it'll continue to flex as we move forward.
Thank you. Thanks. So you've been in buildings twice, did you say? So the whole time have you been working from home? Most
of the time I've been working from home.
Speaking of experience, that's a bit of a beggar, isn't it? So what have you done?
Yeah, it's a funny one because we yeah, sorry, go on.
What have you done? Because your home's become your office. What have you done to relax during this period?
Well, now there's another story because we just moved house in January last year. And we bought this house and it was a bit of a project. You wouldn't believe what it looked like to start with. And so I'd always planned to have a little room, a little space, a bit of an office so that I could just take myself off and do what I need to do and have some, you know, quiet space. So I've been really fortunate that was kind of almost a foreseen expectation that I put on my husband and said, make sure you make me a space for an office. So I've been lucky because I can just shut myself off. And I know that some people have really struggled if they've had to find a space, you know, when there's other people in the house, etc. So that it's been good, but you know, sometimes as well it can feel a little bit lonely, and sometimes I have to say to myself, you know, switch off now, because when you're working from home you go straight from your office or your room or your space into your kitchen and start making tea or whatever. And I actually used to love the journey home where I could wind down, turn the radio up, have a little sing song and just feel as though I've relaxed. The other challenge, I suppose, within that project has been initially all the banging, the drilling, the electricity suddenly going off, or the internet connection being interrupted. So that initially for the first few months was a bit of a challenge. I have to say, I had no doors on at one point, so I was trying to put my headphones in and make sure nobody else could hear any of the surrounding noises. But we've got there, and I'm really quite comfortable working here now. But I do miss the people, the physical.
Do you know what you've done there? You've done exactly what I didn't want you to do. You've told me how you've worked. You haven't told me how you've relaxed.
How I've relaxed, true.
How has Karen relaxed? Have you relaxed?
So I suppose I have actually felt more relaxed in that I don't have to get up in the morning and rush off out and drive a journey, because my role does cover the whole of Lancashire. So some days I'll be having to get up really early to drive maybe up to Lancaster.
Right, yeah.
Or across, to Preston.
You wonder how necessary some of these trips actually used to be.
Yeah. And then, of course, sometimes coming home, that would take quite a while as well, because I live just across the border in West Yorkshire. I suppose I've not had that wind down time, but the compensation for that is I've had a bit more time in bed in the morning to rest. And in the evening, when I do turn off and go into the home, it's kind of, a bit more time in an evening to say maybe watch your favourite film or sit and read a book. And I've loved being able to just pop out at lunchtime and take the dog out for a walk.
Bonus. No.
Yeah.
You haven't told us about your dog.
She's a Cocker Spaniel. She's a rescue dog. She is here somewhere. Well, she's disappeared. She's normally snoring in the background, so I was hoping and praying that she wouldn't be snoring too loud through this interview. But she's a rescue dog. She's 10 years old, and she's like glued to my side most of the time whilst I've been working from home.
I've got one of them. He'll bark soon because my partner's due to come in, then I'll hear him bark. So just apologies for that if that happened. Karen, what have you learnt about yourself during these testing times?
I've learned to sort of accept that your emotions are up and down quite a bit, with the different challenges. And I've learned that sometimes it's okay to say, I've not managed to get that done today. And I've learned that just providing a little bit of additional support to somebody, maybe on the phone rather than, sending emails to people. I still have to do that because I've got to reach out to various different people in the team. But I think I've learned to be a bit more relaxed about some of that, because I can reflect and see how much is actually being achieved, and Rome wasn't built in a day. So I've just learned to be a little bit more relaxed about some of that. Sometimes I used to beat myself up a little bit about, how much we need to get done by this point. And, from a well-being perspective, that doesn't help anybody, does it? Because it just adds further pressure in a very pressured environment with COVID and everything else that's going on. I've just learned to try to relax and I don't know, trust others more as well, because you don't need to be. I don't need to be in a building. I don't need to be in a building. I don't need to feel like I have to be here, there, and everywhere. We've proved that actually this different way of working is still working.
Thank you. Do you know what I'm going to do now? We've been trying to get service users. It's notoriously difficult to do this. To give us some questions to ask you. I do a little group on a Thursday morning, which is alcohol information session for people new to service. And this is a question. It sounds like a total deviation from what we've been talking about, but I want to do it because he's thought about it so hard and he'd written it down and he was very clear about the words that he used. So. And I know that he'll be watching this to find out what your answer is. So, how do you value practices of meditation, mindfulness and spirituality within Inspire? And if these are found to have some gravitas, how will it be embedded in practice going forward?
Mm.
I know, proper question that.
Well, I love that question, actually.
Yeah, I'll send it to you on email if you like. I love the password.
I mean, one of the things that I have observed is that across the services, I mean, I'll just from a service perspective start with my answer, but I have seen, you know, these invites popping up for various different sessions that people individually have come forward to suggest that they run, and staff have engaged in it and service users have engaged in it, and that opportunity to maybe consider giving yourself some space to think about a bit of mindfulness. I think has been very valuable for people. Last week we had Sharon from Central and North Lancs. She's been running some sessions for the staff there, and she came onto the area meeting of the managers, and each Wednesday we make sure we have some space just for well-being for those managers, and we've had some, you know, fun activities, but then we've also practiced maybe a little bit of yoga, or Sharon particularly brought this session around mindfulness, and it was so relaxing. So I really value it, and I think it's important that if we want to support people to feel well, we need to feel well.
That's brilliant, thank you.
Yeah, so I suppose personally for me, again, just I like to listen and observe and learn from what other people suggest as well, as what works. I did a little bit of research looking for some just short YouTube clips to take into one of our meetings about mindfulness, and I came up with this little video. This man who was talking about the present moment and how important it is that quite often our minds run away with ourselves. And he was talking about how his dog will go off sniffing down a route when he takes it on a walk. All of a sudden it's near the edge of the cliff because its mind has taken it, distracted it into a totally different place than where it should be going. And every day we all do that, don't we? Our minds wander. We sit and we just take 5 minutes, but we start thinking about a particular task. Then before we know it, we think about something else or what we're doing tomorrow. And just that opportunity to think about, switch off from doing that. Just think about where you are in the moment, the present moment. Really, really helped me to sort of reflect. And every now and again, I'll think, right, stop letting your mind wander. So I think it is really, really important. I think what we learn from each other on a daily basis in terms of how we all perhaps practice mindfulness or think about our own personal well-being is really, really important.
Thank you. I kind of didn't expect you to come from that angle, and it's really good because for me, I from having gone through service, I feel that mindfulness and reference to spirituality is very high on the agenda, and we expect service users to get involved, and maybe they've never come across anything like that before, but you've just come then from the angle of staff being familiar and valuing it as a useful tool. To enable, because if staff can't do it, how can they expect service users?
Exactly. Yeah.
So that's really useful. Thank you. That's a really good response. And I've got another one. Surprise extra question, Nina. Came in at the last minute. It's not from me. This is from one of our peers. But as you know, Nina and I come through service, and this is another of our peers who's come through service. And what he is saying, it's relevant for us too, though.
Can you give me? I'm sorry, Mo. Can you just give me 1 minute? I've got somebody knocking at the door.
Okay. So how do you see the role of volunteers and peer mentors developing within the service? Big, wide open question.
Yeah.
We're hanging on
it. I actually think there's quite a lot of work already been done to open up opportunities for volunteers and mentors. I think in terms of, you know, we've got many, many more people out there that we need to reach. So people with lived experience, volunteers, mentors, they're as important as the paid workforce to me, because they give us much more capacity, which means we are able to expand and do more things that we can with more people. But also they bring the lived experience that brings added value, if that makes sense. So I think, I mean, even just I've worked for CGL now for 2 years, and I've seen the roles of volunteers and peer mentors expanding even over that time. So I think I can't remember at what point Mo started with East Lancs, but you know, I've seen his role develop more, and I've seen more people get involved in various different things. All this connectivity through digital resource, it wouldn't have been perhaps possible without volunteers. And also that aids, I suppose, the understanding of the wider community around what we do, and gives them some reassurance that actually, you know, people make different decisions in life, but actually, you know, there's a lot of people got a lot to give back, and we need as a society to learn from that, I think. So, does that answer the question, Jackie?
I think that's it.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Jackie, and thank you, Karen. Have you any last comments you want to make for our service users, Karen? Any messages?
Yeah, I suppose one of the things I would say is just a heartfelt thank you for being involved and being part of what we do, because we all make up this interesting jigsaw, don't we? And the jigsaw comes nicely together when you've got all the right pieces. So for me, we can't do it without you, and we certainly don't want to do it to you. We want to do it with you. So let's keep on doing what we're doing. Let's carry on growing, because it's just so wonderful, and I think everybody values the extra whatever it is, the something that people bring when they've got that lived experience. And so I'd like to thank people for trusting us, and sort of stepping forward through those doors or making that phone call, whatever it is, and recognising that we can help and support as best as we can, because nobody knows what experience somebody's had in their life, or what's brought them to where they are, unless you give them time and you listen. So, and I suppose at this time of year, I'd just like to wish everybody a really Merry Christmas.
Thank you, Karen.
Stay connected, that's the main thing.
Absolutely, I agree with that. Thank you. Jackie, do you want to say anything?
That's been really interesting, Karen. It's been like sat in somebody's front room, hasn't it? You know, Nina, you probably think we know each other really well. How many times have we met each other? We're just social media pals. We only see each other in Zoom.
Oh, well, that's the power of it, isn't it? It just because I feel like I really know you, and it's probably because I've seen you on your little clips coming up on social media. Brilliant. Oh, I'm a bit of a. I actually probably haven't been on Twitter just as much since I've been working from home, because you can get sucked into doing it all the time, can't you? But I love it because it keeps. You know, we talked about that communication challenge. It actually keeps me feeling like I am connected to what's evolving and developing across Lancashire, and it's wonderful.
Thank you so much.
And thank you for giving me the time.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Karen, for coming to agree, and Jackie, thanks for coming and doing a fabulous job as well. Thank you.
Thank you to both of you for doing that.
We'll see you next month for another member of staff.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks very much.